EduVerse PD Podcast, brought to you by ProEd Education Solutions, your on-the-go professional development. Welcome to the world's first education podcast hosted by AI. In this episode, our AI co-hosts, Andy and Liz, are delving into a deeply reflective and inspiring topic, understanding self. They'll be exploring the article, Embracing Shadows, a personal letter to educators and students by Michelle H.S. Quick, featured in EduVerse Newsletter, Issue 18, the special edition on neo-mindsets for tomorrow's education. This heartfelt piece challenges us to rethink how we face obstacles and foster growth in education. Get ready for a thought-provoking discussion that's sure to resonate. Let's pass it over to Andy and Liz to kick things off.
Welcome back to EduVerse PD. It's the last day of the year, and time for reflection. And I think who better to help us with that reflection than Michelle H.F. Quick?
Oh, yeah. She's a coach and an author and a speaker, and she's really known for her insightful and really relatable approach to personal growth.
Exactly.
Today, we're exploring Embracing Shadows, a personal letter to educators and students by Michelle H.S. Quick. She's a coach and speaker who helps people tap into their full potential. And this piece really resonated with me. It feels like the perfect time to unpack some of these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we close out the year.
Right.
And Michelle's article offers some really practical ways to do that, not just for ourselves, but for our students, too.
Okay, so let's start with the core concept here, shadow work.
Oh.
The term itself might sound a little intimidating, right? It's based on Carl Jung's idea of the shadow self. But it's not about becoming obsessed with all our flaws, is it?
Not at all. Jung's idea is actually more nuanced than that. He saw the shadow as this hidden part of us.
Right.
Where we store all the stuff we've learned to suppress.
Yeah.
And that can include negative trait, sure, but also strengths and potential that we haven't fully tapped into yet.
So it's less about fixing ourselves and more about understanding and integrating these hidden parts.
Exactly. It's like we can't just erase our shadows.
Yeah.
They're part of who we are. Michelle uses this great analogy from Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, The Shadow.
Okay.
Just like a shadow is always connected to the person.
Right.
These hidden aspects are part of us. It's about recognizing them and learning to work with them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And thinking about our roles as educators, I can see how these shattered aspects pop up all the time, both in ourselves and in the students we work with.
Right.
Michelle gives some really relatable examples in the article, like the teacher who's battling perfectionism, or the student who seems to have these explosive outbursts of frustration.
Right. Those are classic examples of the shadow playing out.
And the first step, like we talked about, is just recognizing it. Michelle offers a few different ways to start noticing those shadow aspects in ourselves.
Okay.
One that really struck me is paying attention to what irritates us in other people.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying those things we find annoying in others might actually be reflecting something back to us about ourselves.
Often, yes.
Wow.
It's like that frustration or judgment we feel might be pointing to something we've disowned or suppressed in ourselves. If someone's stubbornness drives you crazy, for instance, could it be that you struggle with inflexibility yourself? Or maybe it triggers a fear of standing firm in your own convictions.
Interesting.
It's an invitation to get curious about those reactions.
Well, I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to that from now on.
Me too.
There's another method she talks about, right? Something about how we react to situations.
Yes. And this is where it gets even more fascinating. Sometimes we have these really intense emotional reactions to things that seem relatively minor on the surface, and those over-the-top responses often point to deeper, unresolved emotional hurts. Like, imagine a small critique at work sending you into a spiral of self-doubt. That could be a sign that there's a part of you that desperately needs validation and hasn't received it.
That's really insightful.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how important it is to create a space in our classrooms where students feel safe to express those big feelings without judgment.
Absolutely.
And of course, that starts with us as educators modeling that kind of self-awareness and compassion.
And it also makes me think about how our childhood experiences play into all of this. Michelle talks about how those early relationships and situations, especially the ones where we felt judged or rejected, can have a huge impact on our shadow selves.
Right. Those early experiences can really shape how we see ourselves and the world.
Yeah.
And those patterns often carry on into adulthood.
For sure.
It's like those early experiences cast long shadows that we continue to navigate.
Exactly. And that's why this work is so important. It's not about blaming our past,
Right.
but about understanding how it shaped us and then consciously choosing how we want to move forward.
So once we start to recognize these shadow aspects, what's next?
Okay.
What does it actually look like to work with them? Is it about trying to get rid of them?
That's a great question, and it's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Okay.
It's not about trying to erase those parts of ourselves. It's more about shifting our relationship to them. And the first step is approaching those shadow aspects with curiosity, not judgment.
Okay.
Instead of beating yourself up for having those feelings, try to understand them. Michelle uses this great visual.
Okay.
Imagine those emotions as guests knocking on your door.
Okay.
Instead of ignoring them or trying to shove them away, open the door. Let them in and listen to what they have to say.
I like that.
Give those emotions space to exist, and they'll often reveal their purpose.
I love that image.
Yeah.
It's not about suppressing those feelings, but about trying to understand why they're there. It's almost like we're becoming detectives of our own inner world.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable with that, the next step is asking deeper questions. When a shadow aspect surfaces, ask yourself, what is this really about? Let's say you're feeling frustrated. Is it really about the situation at hand? Or is it masking a fear of being misunderstood? Or if you're feeling anxious, could it be because a deeper need for safety and security isn't being met?
Right.
By understanding the root of those feelings, we can start to release old patterns that no longer serve us. We can start to rewire those automatic responses.
I'm already starting to see how this could be so powerful, not just for us personally, but for our students as well.
Absolutely.
If we can help them develop that kind of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, it can make a huge difference in how they navigate challenges in relationships.
Couldn't agree more. But like we said, it starts with us. We have to be willing to do our own work to model that kind of self-reflection and vulnerability.
Okay, so we've talked about recognizing the shadow and starting to understand it. But what about those positive aspects Michelle mentioned? The hidden strengths and passions. Is there a way to tap into those through shadow work?
There absolutely is. One of my favorite parts of the article is where Michelle asks this powerful question. If fear weren't holding me back, what would I do? It's such a simple question, but it can really unlock so much possibility. It encourages us to think about what we truly desire and what might be possible if we could overcome our fears and self-doubt.
It's like she's saying, hey, there's more to you than you realize.
Yeah.
And that shadow work isn't just about facing the darkness. It's about discovering our light.
Precisely. And that brings us to another important concept Michelle highlights, the idea of balancing opposites.
Okay.
It's a lot like the concept of yin and yang.
Right.
She emphasizes that embracing both the light and dark aspects of ourselves is essential for wholeness. We need both to be fully integrated human beings.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's not about striving for some unrealistic ideal of perfection,
Right.
but about recognizing that we're complex beings with both strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
light and shadow. And embracing all of those parts is what makes us whole.
Exactly. It's in that wholeness that we find our true potential.
This is all so fascinating, and it's making me think about my own shadow self in a whole new light. But before we go too deep into our own reflections, I have to ask about that story Michelle tells about her shadow almost hijacking her speech.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
So picture this. Michelle's on stage,
Okay.
microphone in hand, facing a room full of new mothers.
Oh, wow. I can only imagine the energy in that room.
Right? Lots of babies, lots of tired moms.
Yeah.
And Michelle's there to talk about rekindling love in marriages after having a baby.
Okay, so not exactly lighthearted stuff.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting. Michelle's own shadow starts to take center stage. It's whispering doubts in her ear, things like, they think you're a fraud. You've never even been through this. You're going to bomb.
Oof, that inner critic can be so brutal. I've definitely been there.
Oh, yeah. And it gets worse. Michelle says her shadow practically had her halfway down the steps ready to bolt.
Oh, man. I can relate to that feeling of wanting to escape when those doubts start creeping in.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that moment, Michelle had a realization, a crucial insight about these shadow moments.
Yeah.
She describes them like that overly dramatic friend who loves to make a scene. You don't have to kick them out,
Go
but
ahead.
you also don't let them control you.
So it's about acknowledging those feelings without letting them take over. Giving them a seat at the table, but not handing them the microphone.
Exactly. Michelle took a deep breath, acknowledged her shadow, and basically told it to wait its turn. She went on to finish her speech. The moms loved it.
Awesome.
And she walked away with a valuable lesson.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What was the lesson?
It's that letting the shadow have its voice doesn't mean letting it run the show. You always have the power to choose how you respond.
That's so empowering. And it reminds me of that line from Michelle's article. Without darkness, light loses its meaning. It's like she's saying those shadow parts are what make the brighter parts even more meaningful.
Right. We need both.
Right.
We can't have one without the other. And I think that's especially true for us as educators.
Absolutely. We're not perfect, and our students don't expect us to be.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it makes us more relatable and trustworthy when we're willing to show our humanity, our willingness to learn and grow. Michelle even calls it our superpower.
I love that.
So as we're reflecting on all of this,
Okay.
what does it actually mean for us as educators and for our listeners who are taking this all in?
Right.
What are the key takeaways we should be thinking about?
That's a great question. What stands out to you?
Well, one thing that really resonates with me is this idea of embracing the messy,
Yeah.
the awkward, the imperfect.
Yes.
We all have those moments, right? It's part of being human. And instead of trying to hide them or pretend they don't exist, let's give ourselves and our students permission to just be real.
I love that. It takes the pressure off trying to be perfect all the time. What else comes to mind?
Another big one is reframing challenges as opportunities. Instead of getting stuck in the difficulty of a situation, ask, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
How can I use this experience to grow? That shift in perspective can make a huge difference.
It's like turning those stumbling blocks into stepping stones.
Yeah.
And, thinking about Michelle's story, it also makes me think about the importance of modeling resilience for our students.
Yes. Showing them that it's okay to mess up,
For sure.
to feel those doubts and fears, and to keep going anyway.
Right.
That's such a powerful lesson.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about embracing imperfection and reframing challenges. Any other takeaways you want to highlight?
Oh, definitely. We can't forget about those hidden strengths and passions that Michelle talked about. Remember, they're often waiting to be discovered in those shadowy parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's keep asking that powerful question. If fear weren't holding me back, what would I do? What would I create? What would I try? That question can open up so many doors.
It's like an invitation to step into our full potential. So, with all of this in mind, what are some concrete steps our listeners can take to start embracing their shadows and working towards wholeness?
Yeah.
Michelle outlines a few practical things in the article, right?
She does. And they're things we can all incorporate into our daily lives.
Yeah.
No matter how busy we are. The first one is simple, observe without judgment.
Okay.
Just notice your recurring emotions and patterns. Are you easily frustrated?
Yeah.
Do you tend to withdraw when you feel overwhelmed? Don't criticize yourself for these things. Just notice them.
Right.
Ask yourself, why does this bother me?
Yeah.
What might this be trying to tell me?
That's a great starting point. Just becoming aware of those patterns without judgment is huge. Next, remember to appreciate the contrasts in life.
Okay.
Life's full of ups and downs, quiet moments, and chaos.
Yeah.
Embracing those contrasts helps us cultivate gratitude and resilience. It's like that yin-yang concept we were discussing.
They can't have one without the other.
That's so true. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
What else did Michelle suggest?
This one's especially important for us go-getters.
Okay.
Balance doing with being. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life,
Right.
always striving to achieve and accomplish.
Yeah.
But growth also happens in the stillness, in those moments of quiet reflection. Give yourself permission to pause, to rest, to just be.
It's like we always say on the show, you have to stop and smell the roses sometimes.
For sure.
And as educators, it's easy to get caught up in that constant doing, especially with all the demands on our time.
Exactly. And then finally, remember to reframe challenges as opportunities.
Okay.
This is such a powerful mindset shift, and it can help us see even the toughest moments as stepping stones on our journey. When you encounter a setback, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this help me grow?
It's about finding that silver lining, even when things are tough. And speaking of challenges and growth, Michelle had some specific advice for educators, right?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to
Yeah.
touch on that. She seems to have a real heart for teachers.
Yeah.
What were some of the key things she highlighted?
Well, one of the most powerful messages is that our humanity is our superpower.
Okay.
As teachers, we often feel the pressure to have all the answers, to be perfect role models.
Yeah.
But Michelle reminds us that students don't just learn from lessons, they learn from the person delivering them.
Right.
When we're willing to show our own imperfections, our own struggles, it gives students permission to do the same.
That makes so much sense. It creates that space for vulnerability and authenticity that we talk about all the time on EduVerse.
Yeah.
And I think that's what allows for a real learning and growth to happen.
Exactly. And for students, she has a message that's just as empowering.
Okay.
She reminds them that every mistake, every doubt, every shadowy moment is a stepping stone, not a stop sign. It's all part of the learning process.
That's a great way to reframe those moments. Instead of seeing those stumbles as failures, we can help students see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Precisely. And it struck me as I was reading this that Michelle's message isn't just for students in the traditional sense. We're all students in life, constantly learning and evolving.
That's so true. That's what I loved about this article. It really speaks to all of us, no matter where we are in our journey.
Yeah.
Whether we're standing in front of a classroom, navigating a challenging relationship, or just trying to make sense of our own inner world, this idea of embracing our shadows is so relevant.
Absolutely. It's a call to wholeness, to authenticity, to showing up as our full selves, light and shadow and all.
And what a powerful way to end the year. As we move into 2025, let's remember Michelle's wise words. Without darkness, light loses its meaning. Let's embrace our shadows, learn from them, and allow them to help us shine even brighter.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, what is one small step you can take this week to explore your own shadow, to move toward greater wholeness and authenticity in your life?
That's a great question to ponder as we wrap up the year. We hope Michelle's words have given you some things to think about, maybe even some new ideas for the year ahead. We wish you all a happy and fulfilling new year filled with growth, discovery, and the courage to embrace your full, brilliant selves.
Happy New Year, everyone.
What a meaningful conversation. Thank you, Andy and Liz, for unpacking the profound lessons from embracing shadows and offering us new perspectives on self-awareness and growth. And a special thank you to Michelle H.S. Quick for sharing such a powerful and personal message. Be sure to read the full article in EduVerse Newsletter, Issue 18. It's available now on our website at www.proed.com.vn/eduverse, along with other enlightening pieces on neo-mindsets for tomorrow's education. Remember, the EduVerse Newsletter is your platform too. Have a story or insight to share? Join the EduVerse community by submitting your article today. Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to welcome you back to the first episode of 2025. Stay tuned and Happy New Year!